Junior Volleyball Association presents Sideline Strategy, a volleyball podcast. This week's episode features Garrett Minyard with the Northeast Volleyball Club as he discusses running effective meetings.
We're going to talk about running effective meetings, and my first point about running effective meetings is that you actually don't need to run that many meetings. Meetings tend to take up more time than they need to. They tend to make things feel like they're a bigger deal than they really are. And especially if that meeting is like a one-on-one and, coach gets a text from you saying, hey, can we talk later today, at 3:30? And they're just like, oh God, what did I do wrong? I've never had a coach walk into that meeting feeling, positive and like, oh, this is great. I'm happy we're meeting. They're always like, what's going on? What did I do? And it doesn't have to be that way. It really doesn't have to be that way. If you're giving good feedback in real time and that's consistent, and we just create a culture where that's normal, then, we don't have to stop and pause as much and take up more time than we know these coaches are already putting in through their commute to practice, their practice time, they're watching video, they're traveling to tournaments. Now I need to get them on a meeting for another hour of their week, and it just gets hard, right? And so I'm going to talk to some of the conflicts and challenges of running effective meetings, but then I'll give you a little insight on how we try to be better with that. So obviously the big conflict is getting people in person. If we're going to do meetings, it's typically about something that we need everyone to know. Our one-on-one meetings are more, there's a problem that we have to solve. But if we're just doing a meeting to give people information that everyone needs to hear, we want to try to get as many people in that room as possible, right? And that becomes super challenging. So we only do that twice a year. We only get all of our coaches in the gym twice a year. We do it once before the club season in the fall, and we do it once before our summer sessions in the spring. And those can be super, super valuable. They're a lot of fun, but you need to give people a ton of notice on that. So we're scheduling those meetings months in advance to make sure that we get the highest attendance possible. That's not something that we are able to drop on people a week before and say, mandatory meeting this Saturday. And it just seems unfair. And then we get bad attendance and we're frustrated. The people there are frustrated. So it's not always a good deal. So if you give them enough time and sometimes you give them a reward for being there, and that doesn't have to be monetary, but in the past, we just order a bunch of food for those meetings. We give out special gear, like coaches gear, to anyone that shows up at those meetings. And obviously our goal is we want to feed everyone and we want to give everyone this cool new hoodie. But we can't if you're not going to be there. So it kind of creates a little bit more of an incentive for them. We again, just because it's hard doesn't mean we can't do it always, similar to those conversations that we're having with coaches on the court. So we do need to find a way. And so one of the things that we meet about the most is our curriculum that we use across the entire club. So every team in our club over the course of the season is working on the same stuff as in different phases as we go through. What the work looks like on the court changes from team to team, level to level, but the concepts that we're teaching are all the same. And if we're going to do that, then we need all of our coaches to be on the same page. And we view this as our common language throughout the club. Now, in order for everyone to speak that language, they need to hear us speak about it, and they need to hear, right from the horse's mouth, like, these are the expectations, these are the things that we're teaching, this is how you're going to say it. And I have had a lot of trial and error in this, and I think I finally landed in a good place. We started off trying to do all of these in person. And as I've mentioned, that's way too big of a challenge and never really panned out to something that we were excited about. so we started moving to this hybrid model where we had some people in person, but then we also had a phone set up to record the session on the court that was like on a Google Meet. So we had some people that were watching virtually, and then we would save the meet and then we'd send it out to anyone else who's there. I mean, I'm talking about a lot of work for one meeting about like, this is how we want to teach passing. So we moved away from that and we started to just go virtual. We just went like Zoom meetings, Google Meets. Again, now in 2024, I think everyone is pretty much over those hour-long meetings on Zoom or Google Meet. So we had really horrible engagement during those meetings and not a lot of participation. And you're certain that a lot of these people don't have their camera on and they're just I'm speaking to no one, and they're just going about their day. And where we landed now is that we use a program called Loom, where I will give a presentation and record myself giving that presentation. And so we'll have we'll have the slides will be the primary screen, and then we'll have my little picture down on the bottom, little talking head in the bottom, explaining everything through the slide in this presentation. And I will send that link out when it's done, and it just exists for our coaches to go in and watch on their own time. And I always encourage them to watch it on their way to practice while they're commuting in the car, on their way to work, what have you. But I mean, I'm a very like visual learner. And so having both the audio and the presentation going, and I will include all sorts of video clips and pictures and animations and different diagrams and things like that to just try to hit on everyone's best way of learning and listening and absorbing that information. And once I send that link out, I also have the ability to see who has actually logged in and watched it. So our coaches have accounts on Loom. And when they watch the video, their name will pop right up. It will also tell me how long they watched the video for. And so every now and then I'm making a phone call to say, I appreciate you watching the video. That was, it's about 20 minutes long, each of them. But you only watch 3 minutes of it. So if you could hit the other 17, that would be great. And, just having the ability to actually track that and give people the ability to watch it on their own time has been an absolute game changer for us. And I've felt like since we've started using that, we've had way, way, way more engagement from our coaches on that. They've been speaking the language that we want them to speak a lot more consistently. The real winners of all that are the athletes, because they're now getting really consistent coaching and messages and language across the board from the time they're 12 to 18. So that's something that we're going to continue doing, and I highly recommend. And then, the other form of meetings that we're having consistently is just little meetings before master coaching sessions that I'm doing on the court. So I'll run 3 or 4 teams at a time on our courts, and before the session, I will send out the plan to all the coaches, and I will make sure they know what their assignments are. If we're doing some positional work or we're combining teams or things like that, everyone has a role, and we got to be really clear in that communication. But right before the session starts, we will call all the coaches that are coaching into the board. We will go through the entire plan together. We'll tell them exactly what we're asking them to look at in every drill, some things that they can be saying, like giving them, some coaching cues to focus on in each session, and just letting them ask some questions. And like, obviously we all want questions because we know coaches are learning that way. So I get some really awesome engagement and question asking and the ability to explain things in person, just in these like 5-minute whiteboard meetings before the start of the session. And that works way better than, me just going out there and going center ring and running the whole show and just leaving the other coaches in the dust. That's great for me, but not so great for them. And it's not going to help them get the full understanding of things that we're doing. Right. And similar, as I mentioned before, about going out and changing things in practice, my job as master coach in those sessions is I'm going in to explain the things that we're working on, talk about the concepts, talk about the activities that we're going to do, explain the rules of a game and the ideas that we're focused on in this particular activity. And then the coaches go out and they run their courts. And I do not go out and run courts. I am walking around at that time and I am coaching coaches. And this is just another form of our constant communication with them, where if things need to change, if it's time to move on to the next activity, or we're doing something that's time-based for rounds, I'm just going to each coach and saying, hey, now you're going to move on to this. Hey, now you're going to move on to this. Now you're going to move on to this. And they are then the ones with the real voice going back to their athletes and saying, all right, guys, we're moving on. And this is what we want to be focused on in this, this period or whatever. Again, just helping our coaches create that voice and be consistent is a really, really important part of their development.